So it's now my privilege to introduce our next speaker to you. So she is a strategist with a passion to empower specifically small business owners. She's the founder of Tushaya Advisory Services, providing design and implementation of SMEs and entrepreneurial development programs. Three things define her: strategic thinking, a passion for serving as a catalyst for economic growth, which we so need in our economy currently, and serious determination. These traits led her to being crowned the SACBW Business Woman of the Year in 2014. Under her leadership, this organization has experienced exponential growth. So, Life of Leadership, class of 2020 in Pretoria, would you mind welcoming Abigail Khuluse?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. What an honor and a privilege to be with you here this afternoon in these interesting times. I'm here, you there, we here, we together. Thank you for the invitation. I really would like to start by honoring you and honoring each and every person who's on this program, each and every participant on this program, because I honor you for taking the time to press in, to push in, to hear and to learn on how to, as leaders, on how to bring forth the kingdom of God in our respective areas, in our lives, in business, in family. I find that many times we take that for granted. We actually think that, well, certainly I did in my formative years. I'm a Christian now, you know, Christ within me, his blood flows within me. Wherever I go, I take him with me and he's there with me. And there's very little pressing in and really stepping in with diligence to say, Lord, seeking God and saying, Lord, I really want to be at the center of what you're doing. I really want to hear from you. I really want whatever is happening in my space, you know, to be influenced by me hearing from you and what you are doing. So as a kid, I used to often marvel at the musicians, the artists, and they used to spend hours and hours and hours practicing and singing. And I'm sure some of you may be in your worship bands at church. I mean, those guys, hey, on outside of COVID, while we stood in bed, they're already setting up sound and testing, etc. And I used to think to myself, gosh, surely if you have the gift and you can sing, you just have to open your mouth and voila, you know, there goes the beautiful voice would come out. But that was before I had learned and read the book by John Maxwell that says talent is never enough. So even then in our Christian sphere and in our walk, you know, just being Christian is not enough. It's required of us to dig deep and to say, Lord, we want to hear from you and we want to remain in the center of what you're doing. So I really honor each and every one of you, and I wish I was in that seat. So now I know about the program. Ruan, next year, can I be in that seat? So today we're talking humility. Humility. By show of hands, please can you raise your hand if you think you're humble. If you're a humble person, please raise your hand. And while you raise your hand, and for those of you, while you're thinking about it, I'm going to share my screen. For those of you who've raised your hands, let's get this into presentation mode. I wonder if you are saying, what the world really needs is more geniuses with humility. There are so few of us left, you know? Or if you didn't raise your hand, maybe you are saying, if only I had a little bit more humility, then I'd be perfect. So whichever one it is that you are saying, I really wonder if we can really put our hands up and we can, with confidence all the time say we are humble people and we have arrived. Or is it a constant state of being that one needs to be in? And, whichever way we see it, the reality and what I think we know for sure, when we are being humbled, we definitely know for sure that we are being humbled. Yeah? Can you recall a moment that okay, this is a moment when I am being humbled? I'm sure most of us can. So I draw back on a memory as a kid on where did I learn, my first memory of humility and where I learned humility. And I learned humility within our home. A very funny story. I think it's funny, but it taught me a lot. My mother, and I have not gone back to ask her why she did that, and I think I will, but she often used to say to us, guys, don't go around telling people what you have, where you live, what you enjoy. Don't go around telling anybody anything. Just be who you are. Forget everything else. Because you may just go around telling people tomorrow what your parents do for a living or, the cars they drive. And the following day you wake up and it's all gone. And imagine having to go back to those same people now. And then they're going to ask you, but didn't you say this about your family? Or didn't you say this about your house? Didn't you say this about your car? As little kids, kids always want to be talking about those things. But now when she put that in us, that brought so much fear that we thought, oh my gosh, if we woke up one day and it was all gone, what are we going to tell people now? So that kept my sister and I so humble. And I remember we would not even want to talk about our holiday if we had the opportunity to go away and where we went, because she used to say to us, whatever you have is not yours. You are a steward of it. And if it happens that it's gone tomorrow, that's life. Life happens. And you may have it today, it may be gone tomorrow. So that taught me my earliest memory. I fast forward into varsity. By varsity, I was born again. I fearlessly served the Lord and full of the zeal. And I remember in one of my constant prayers, I had learned a lot about humility, and I wanted humility, knowing what the Bible says about humility and how God hates pride. My deepest desire was, Lord, I really want to be humble. And it came from such a genuine place. And I remember praying, by the way, I studied there in Pretoria. So some of you probably drive past my room there in Magriki. And I would be praying. I said, Lord, please, I want to enroll into the school of humility. I want to learn humility. And Lord, I pray that may I never graduate from the school of humility. And that was my constant prayer that I prayed all the time. And how many of you know that God answers prayers? Yeah? God answers prayers, right? And what does it mean then when God answers that prayer? It means that I get a whole lot of opportunities to be able to choose between pride and humility. There are a lot of opportunities that come my way that put me into that position where I have to be real and look at myself and say, okay, what's going on here? I remember incidences that would happen, particularly one example. When we're in class, there were students that obviously there are other people who are smarter than you, who know better than you, who are more outspoken than you. And there was these two particular ladies in our class who always intimidated me. And I would try not to sit close to them and wouldn't want to be in their group because, Jesus, people talk too much. But anyway, they know so much as well, And at that point, I remember the humility moment for me, having to say, you know what? I'm going to reach out to these two ladies and I'm going to get to know them better. And I'm going to say to them, I'd love to journey with you and learn from you. And through that moment, funniest thing is still today, I still talk to them and they are still my friends. And this is like 15 odd years ago. So those opportunities of learning humility in my everyday walk keep coming up. I fast forward into my career and my first job. I was in public transport for the first year. I worked in Joburg CBD. And I then, when I got the opportunity to get a car, that was in my second year of work, I remember thinking to myself, you know, it's so easy for me to, now that I have a car, to think I'm better than those people who are in a taxi and who are on buses. And I would often park my car, not often as in every day, but every now and then, every second week or so, I would park the car and I'd take a bus and I'd take a taxi to work. And people would say to me, but don't you have a car? Why are you taking a taxi to work? And for me, I would just keep reminding that, for me, that was just a reminder that says, I want this to be a symbol and a reminder for me that I'm no better than the people who are in a taxi or the people that are in a bus. If they can, you know, if they are good enough for it, I'm not any better. So being, you know, continuing in that in that mode of transport, if I can call it, for me, became that constant reminder to say we are all the same. I may be in a car, they may be in a taxi, they may be in a bus. You know what? I'm no different or any better to the person who's next to me or to my neighbor. And I'm generally an impatient person. I knew I was impatient, but I didn't realize it was so bad until I became a mother. I didn't realize it was so bad until I became a mother. And till today, my toddlers, I have two toddlers, a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. They remind me and teach me every day that I need to be more humble. Now, you may know that naturally to be patient. Now, you may know that naturally being an impatient person means that you don't like to be inconvenienced. Like, you don't like to be inconvenienced because that just messes up, you know, with your plan and what you had wanted to do. And I remember someone saying to me, you know, Abby, you need to take a deep breath. Inconvenience is not that bad. You need to start seeing inconvenience as an opportunity to learn. Just stop, pause, and learn humility and learn patience. So every time you are being inconvenienced, ask yourself, what is it that you need to learn? Gosh, that actually hit very hard, I must say, because like I say, you know, I hated inconvenience. It hit so hard that I really had to do introspection. And now consciously, every time I find myself in a situation that is inconvenient, to stop and reflect. And how many of us love visiting the government departments? Can I see show of hands? Who loves visiting the government departments? You know, we all get so worked up. Just the thought of going to Home Affairs or, you know, your driver's license. My husband just spent a good, and I kid you not, like maybe 3 days just trying to renew his driver's license. And going to that department for me is one of the biggest inconveniences one can ever think of, just because of the way things run. And I now have a tactic, since I've learned that inconvenience is actually an opportunity for me to learn humility and patience. Whenever I go to the government departments, I get there and I take a deep breath and I say, right, Lord, what lesson are we going to learn today? You know, and often I find myself chatting and ministering to the people around me who are huffing and puffing and getting all worked up, because we really get worked up, you know, because we're so annoyed at just how things are working and there's no service delivery, etc., etc. But even in those moments, there are really subtle moments that we can use to reach out and to see what is happening around us. You know, it's often about taking that pause in that moment of being inconvenienced. It could either be, seeing myself in the shoes of the other person, or just, Abby, take a deep breath and be patient. And actually, there's someone next to me that I could be ministering to at that particular time. And those things on a daily basis for me are the small reminders that keep me going on my journey of humility, this school that I will not graduate from and never arrive. When we started this business about 10 years ago, so something else about me, I'm really somebody who likes being organized. I like planning, and I like certainty. So I would look at people who start businesses and I'd say, wow, I applaud you, really. You did that. You don't even know what the future holds. You don't know what tomorrow holds. You don't know anything because there's so much uncertainty in entrepreneurship. And when my opportunity came, I was like, geesh, okay. I was quite wowed by God, because him obviously knowing my personality, he gave me 1 Chronicles 28. When he said to me, when David was speaking to Solomon, and he was telling Solomon to build the temple, and that God wanted him to build the temple, and spurring him on and encouraging him to do it. One of the instructions that were very clear was that every single thing that you need will be provided for. Whether it's material, whether it's skills, whether it's officers, whatever it is that you need will be provided for. Those are the words that God gave to us when we started. And I kid you not, he was so true to his word as always. Every single thing that we needed was provided for. It was a journey of faith from the word go in every way. From moving the office to my dining room table, to our first office desk, to moving that to bigger offices, and then eventually moving that into to employing people. Each and every one of them was a step of faith. And I remember God saying clearly that we may not have the millions or the couple of zeros in our bank account that we would like to have in order to do certain things, but that shouldn't stop us. We need to go ahead and continue to implement, because he's going to provide. And in moments of frustration, there are times when you feel, okay, I really, really, really can't do this. I remember chatting to one of my mentors, and I was almost in tears. I said to him, look, I'm so tired of living on a shoestring budget. I'm tired of, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to pay salaries in 3 months' time. Do you want to know what his response was? He looked at me and he said, really? So do you believe that you'll be alive in 3 months' time? And I said to him, what question is that? I said, no, you're concerned that you're not sure if you'll be able to pay salaries in 3 months' time. So I'm asking, do you think you'll be alive in 3 months' time? And I said, yeah, I think I'll be alive. He said, well, if you think you're alive, do you think that the God who's going to keep you alive is the God who can also provide for you in 3 months' time? And I was like, okay, I get it. And that ushered, a continuous move of that reminder of living a fully surrendered life. That if I believe that I'll be paying salaries in 3 months' time, that very same God would be the God who'd be the one to provide for that period. In 2019 was our toughest year. We were 10 years. It was our 10th year anniversary. And those of you who are in business, you probably know, they talk about the milestones, about, how long a business can survive for. You keep watching it the first 3 months, the first 3 years. Oh, you reach the 5-year mark. Okay, we got it. 10 years, that's a huge milestone. And we had to eat a lot of humble pie in our 10th year anniversary. We had such a tough year that for the very, very, very first time in 10 years, we had to have salary cuts. We had to move out to smaller offices, and we had to downsize our team, and we had to let people go. that was the most painful thing. The most painful thing to do. It was almost like all the plans and the celebrations, the 10-year plans that we had were thrown out the window. And there were other issues that we had to deal with, which were really difficult issues. And I remember praying through this with one of my friends and looking at how the events have rolled out, and praying in particularly for the people that we've had to let go, and how my heart was just so heavy, and considering how faith things can be in business. And this friend of mine said to me, Abby, instead of dwelling on about how unfair things are and how things turn out, if we surrender this to God, God, being sovereign, probably has a better plan. And as a business owner, we quickly take on the responsibility of those who work with us, who journey with us. And we see ourselves as, just as much as God uses us to provide for them, for their income and for their families, for some reason, we somehow take up a responsibility that we want, that we think we bear, but in actual fact, it's actually too big of a responsibility for us to bear. And she reminded me that ultimately each and every staff member is actually in God's hands. And she began to just encourage us to say, list each and every one who is going to be retrenched in the process, and pray for each and every one of them by name. Pray for their future. Pray that the latter will be greater than the former. Pray that, God will just release them into the things that they need to be doing in that particular season and in the next season. And, just being able to do that and coming down to just praying for each and every one of them and laying them before God brought so much relief to my soul and to my heart, and to surrender them and leave them in God's hands, because ultimately they are in God's hands. They're not in our hands, but we have taken that responsibility just purely as by the nature of what we do. And come 2020, just as we are getting up and we are dusting ourselves and we're looking at the year ahead, 2020. Do you guys remember 2020? I think we are so covered that we have forgotten 2020 plenty. And COVID hits, right, in our 2020. And we are so in the middle of it now as we speak. So in this moment of COVID, and I heard the earlier speaker also speaking about how lockdown provides an opportunity to just get into the Word of God, to just step back, to press in rather. So for me, it's been also a lot of stepping back and a lot of reflecting, particularly after the difficult year that we've just had. And in this reflecting, I'd like to share maybe some few things that I've learned or that have, that I've reflected on when it comes to humility. I think through this journey, particularly last year, I realized that it's impossible to live a life of humility unless we are fully surrendered and fully submerged into God Himself. That our life, living a life that is of complete surrender, allows us to acknowledge His sovereignty. And therefore, everything we do and everything we say is like that example that my mother used when I was still a kid of, we don't own anything. We are stewards. Everything that we have, we are stewards. We are stewards of our families. We are stewards of our businesses. We are stewards of our children. We are stewards of the gifts, even the gifts and talents that we have, even that we are stewards of. It's not ours. It doesn't belong to us. Therefore, living a life that is fully surrendered allows us to be able to walk in that moment of humility as we constantly just allow God to use those moments to do what He wants to do. The other thing that I realized and reflected on was how my moments of security, I had found security in things that are not God entirely. So, for example, I love knowledge. I love to learn. I'm a learner. My core strength is learning. So, literally, I wasn't joking when I said I want to sit in the seat as a participant, because I could sit there forever and ever and ever. You know, I that's me. I want to learn. But the inverse of it is that the more I learn and the more knowledge I gain, I begin to put so much confidence in my knowledge, and that becomes my power. You know, so the more knowledge I have, the more confidence I have. And the past 5 years with getting married, having kids, and, you know, and everything that's happening in the business happening, I had very little time to actually learn. You know, when I say learn, I mean the experience of learning in a form of a program or an academic program, any form of a, you know, even conferences. I mean, I used to attend a lot of conferences, and that didn't happen much. And my knowledge tank, it felt like, was declining, you know, and that brought a whole lot of insecurities within me. And I realized that I had taken my eyes off Christ. I put my eyes in what I have, and I used that as, call it my leverage, or my, like I said, my position of power. And it reminded me of Peter. You know, when Peter walked on the water, and he was walking until he looked down, right? And when he stopped looking at Jesus, that's when he began to sink. So when I evaluated and I reflected, I could see that the moments when I was most insecure, and the moments when I was not feeling at my greatest strength, was when I'd actually taken my eyes off Christ, and I put my eyes in something else. The moments when I lacked humility are the times when I had held of great value something else than what Christ was doing and what Christ wanted to do. The last thing that I reflected on is that statement that was shared with me that said, being inconvenienced keeps you humble. I think I've seen it play true in my life, and I can now confidently say, indeed, being inconvenienced does keep me humble. It does force me to pause and to reflect all the time. So in my journey of seeking God and of, you know, being enrolled in the school of humility that I never want to graduate from, I want to constantly be reflecting and not live a life of rush, which is the life that I've always been living, but to always allow myself moments when God can bring his light to reveal the truth in my life and in the situations that are around me. I trust that you've enjoyed what I've had to share, and that you're able to glean just from a small portion of my experience and my journey in the school of humility. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Abigail, hey, what a good job. Thank you so much. And you can see those virtual applauses and the thank you in the comments. Thank you for being real, genuine, authentic, and you know, your willingness to share.
Thank you, Ruan, and thank you to the participants, and I wish you all the best throughout your program. And I pray also that just God will endow, you know, pour out so much onto you that as you grow more and more to be like him, and as you desire more and more of him. Right. Thank you.